one of the core concepts in Christianity is this notion of death to flesh and living by the Spirit. You'll find that in Romans chapters 6 through 8. So I'm going to read a little section here in chapter 8, starting at verse 5. Those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on what the flesh desires, but those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. The mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. Skipping down to verse 9. You, however, are not in the realm of the flesh, but are in the realm of the Spirit, if indeed the Spirit of God lives in you. And if anyone does not have the Spirit of Christ, they do not belong to Christ. But if Christ is in you, then even though your body is subject to death because of sin, the Spirit gives life because of righteousness. And if the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies because of his Spirit who lives in you. This is talking about the promise that is eternal life, that if you live by the Spirit, this is talking about the promise that is eternal life, that God will breathe life back into our even our mortal bodies later. But there's eternal life no matter what in the Spirit. So then verse 12, therefore, brothers and sisters, we have an obligation, but it's not to the flesh to live according to it. But if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the misdeeds of the body, you will live. For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. The Spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. And by him we cry, Abba, Father. Abba, Father, that's another way of saying Daddy. Daddy God. Daddy Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs. Heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ. If indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may also share in his glory. What sufferings? The sufferings of putting to death the misdeeds of the flesh. So this is how to overcome sin, is to live by the Spirit. You stop listening to your flesh. You start listening to what the Spirit says. But you have to start with being born again, having God's Spirit within you. And that starts with belief in Jesus and knowing what he did on the cross and in his resurrection. God bless you guys.